welcome to another edition of Unplugged. Well, opening round is in the book, an enormous build-up, an enormous atmosphere, and there was a lot of differences and a lot of changes and new look Saints, but at the same time, as much as some things change, other things remain the same, and we were beaten in a manner that I think when we were assessing the game last week, we thought if we were going to lose, it would probably be like that, and if Collingwood were going to beat us, it would probably be like that. It was just unfortunate that it unfolded that way. We created enough opportunities to win the game, which is not uncommon. We've had this conversation before, and I guess that's the frustrating part about it. To get 63 inside 50s against a side that structures up as well as Collingwood would mean you should win the game. But at least to my mind, the main separation was when we had momentum in the second and the last quarter, where we had a stack of inside 50s, 38-17 or whatever it was. I think we outscored them by 17 points. And when the inside 50s were even in the first and the third quarter, they outscored us by 5 goals. They were able to get run-ons and take chances. And they just had a few class players like DeGoey, Dacos through the middle, and then Pendlebury a couple of times with his hands. It was just able to separate the game a little bit. And when we had half chances, we couldn't take them. In fact, they were probably better than half chances. When Liam Ryan kicks a gem in the last quarter and then misses a sitter, Darcy Wilson missing a sitter, Cooper Sharman dropping marks and also missing a sitter, a couple of fumbles in the goal square and that sort of stuff. And really that was the difference. Collingwood had less opportunities but didn't fluff them. Which I always thought might be the case, and we just didn't quite take them. So I agree, and once again, the dog walk the morning after the game, listening to Ross's presser, I agree with what he said, that it feels like we're in reasonable shape, but at the same time, you've obviously got to get reward for effort. So Nick, obviously we were sitting next to each other watching that game unfold. Like we did quite a few things right, but we did the same things wrong and lost the game the same way.
Yeah, it's frustrating. In the moment, it's far more frustrating than the cold light of day, the next day or a couple of days later. And I think you're right. The frustrating thing is what killed us is the thing that's killed us for years, for decades, really, in terms of, that final execution, dominated inside 50s, but just the delivery inside 50 was atrocious at times. And then when we did deliver it in nicely, we fluffed the opportunity to hit the scoreboard properly and, missed shots that, generally, you would look at most of them and go, every AFL player should rightly kick these goals. And that's really frustrating when you're playing against an experienced team. And we know Collingwood potentially aren't a top 2, top 3 team anymore, particularly missing some of the key guys that they are missing right now. But they're still a very, very experienced, very, very composed team. And I think we saw that kind of in those moments when, the heat was on. They looked more composed, slower with the ball. They were able to hold it up, slow it down, hit targets, whereas we looked a bit more panicked. And I think that comes down to experience and composure, really. They were able to control the game in those moments when they needed to, and we weren't. Like you said, we had those runs of momentum where, we might have kicked 1 goal 3 when really we should have kicked 4 goals straight, or we kicked 2-3 and should have kicked 4-1. But, story of our life, really, missed opportunities. It is what it is. We move on now. It's a tough one to swallow because of the massive hype, all the talk, all the media, or the whole off season really, and pre-season where everything seemed to be going our way. And then to drop that game in the way that we did, we probably should have been 4 or 5 goals up at halftime. If we kick a few of those easy shots at goal that we didn't take advantage of, and if we do that, we're having a very different conversation. So it is a tough one to kind of get over, but you have to. And we play Melbourne, in a week's time or just under a week's time, and we got to go again and onwards.
Yeah, it's hard to know which moment to focus on first. Obviously, there's all of the little things. Marshall takes a contested mark, but Nash tried to take the hanger over the top. So instead of us having a shot, Collingwood go down and kick one. So instead of us being 2 goals up, it's pretty much level. The 2 misses that were easy in the third quarter, Wilson dropping a mark, running flat out in the last quarter where he would have been 5 metres out, would have put us within a point. What happens if Liam Ryan doesn't curl the ball too far and we're, a kick down at that stage of the game? So they're the losses that you hate because there's 1,000 things where you're like that happens differently and we might win.
Oh, absolutely. It's something you can go through probably every player out of the 23 on the weekend and say they did this at this point, this at this point, this at this point, and go, we know that's not what they normally would do. It seems to be, was it a pressure thing? Was it just being a stage fright? What was it that made these decisions? A couple of things got me frustrated during the game. The no-look passes by Philippa over the head most of them just went straight to a Collingwood player. Darcy Wilson, we talked about how fast he is. Why is he jogging the ball out of the back line and getting tackled? Little things that you just go, Philippa looks at someone and hits a target and we run off. Wilson uses his pace and runs out of the back line as fast as he can and kicks down to someone downfield. Just little things that we need to polish because you change those and the game changes. And you could, as I say, you can go through every single player in the list and go one little thing like that. And if they change that one thing, it's a completely different game. And it's just little moments that we could have changed the whole outcome because, yeah, it was, as again, is it just a thing? Was it a little bit of stage fright? It was a little bit of the overwhelming what was going on out there. I mean, if you look back at the game, the first 15 minutes, our best player was probably Brad Hill. What has Brad Hill done before? He has played in front of massive crowds like that. He's had that experience. He didn't faze him whatsoever. And for that first 15 minutes, that was vintage Brad Hill. And I all of a sudden I was thinking, where's this come from? Where he's just stepped up and he fell back as the game went on. He didn't completely disappear, but yeah, he came back to the pack a little bit, but he got us off to a good start. Just needed to bring a few along with him and just needed to settle those nerves a little bit earlier and not let, I guess, a couple of their players just have 5 minutes where they dominated us. Tagoe in the first quarter, no one stood next to him for 5 minutes. McCreary, no one stood next to him for 5 minutes at some point. Both of those two kicked two within very short periods of time, and you go, well, look, if someone sat on them before the second one occurred, there's 2 goals right there as well. So, yeah, it's just needing to get that. It's not necessarily the new parts to the team. Most of them seem to work reasonably well. It's a lot of some of the old habits and things that we need to just polish and get all working the right direction, and hopefully it comes together sooner rather than later.
I want to ask you guys a couple of questions, I guess, about coaching and structure and how we lined up. I want to start with structure first because, H, you mentioned Darcy Wilson and moments where he wasn't able to use his pace or chose not to. And then, of course, there was that one moment where he put the Jets on down the wing and he had no one to kick to. He had to pull himself up, had no one to kick to. There were a number of times throughout the course of the game, and I don't want to talk really about the last quarter because obviously we know that Marshall came off and they had to rejig things in the forward line, but the forward line structure seemed a bit out of kilter throughout the course of the game. A number of times where we'd move the ball forward kind of off half back through the middle and we had no one forward of centre, no one inside 50 to kick to, no one to target. And we had to really slow the game down, which would then allow not just our own forwards to get back inside 50 and close to goal, but obviously their defensive unit. And they are a really well-structured team, as we know. Do you think that is that a structural issue or do you think we just didn't execute properly? H, I might start with you because Darren, you and I spoke about this a fair bit on the night.
It's probably more skill-based than anything. Like it was there, the structure was there. A lot of it just didn't pay off. Sharman dropping a few marks in the forward line that he would probably usually grab. A couple of players getting in the way. As we're saying, there's a few times where there was a pass and the wrong player sort of half cut it off. I remember I can't remember who the handball was going to, but it was a clean handball and it was going straight to our player, but someone, I think it was Marshall, stuck his hand up and knocked it out of the way. And there's just those couple of little errors that when we're playing well, they would have worked. Sharman holds 3 to 4 more marks than what he did. Marshall gets called out, leave it, and it's mine. And I think it was, I've got a feeling it was Naz that was going to. He runs off with the ball. It's just the structure was there. It's, just as I was saying just before, it's just that bit of polish that we need to have on what we're doing, and things will fall into place. So I don't think the issue is at all what we're doing. It's just how we went about doing it, and let's just hope it's going to fall into place reasonably quickly.
Yeah, well, obviously, when players get sucked up the ground, and look, it happened a couple of times at Collingwood, but more with us, particularly in the second quarter when we were dominating possession, clearance and territory, you were thinking then that would be the time if you hold your structure. I mean, if you have 21 inside 50s to 7, you shouldn't have too many of those where there's no one at home. But yeah, look, I mean, that can work to your favour if you feel you don't have necessarily the the height or the marking prowess. If you open it up and allow speed, fine. But obviously there's got to be someone to draw the footy long and then have that space around them. So we got caught out a few times there. And I imagine, Nick, your other structural question might relate to selection. So apologies if stealing the thunder on that one, but I'll ask you that question as well to put it back onto you, just whilst I'm on a roll, I guess. But we were thinking that perhaps Stocker, given the matchups in that Collingwood forward line. Now, Elliott, their most dangerous small forward, was fairly well contained, but Schultz was hugely influential. And then obviously De Goey, when he went forward, was influential. Carroll wasn't our worst player on the night, but didn't have an enormous influence. So, I'm still a little bit bewildered by that. How did you see the matchups in defence? No one was soundly beaten, but yeah.
Yeah, you know me too well, because that was exactly the second question I was going to ask you guys. But I mean, anyone who's, I guess, listened to this show over the last 12 or 18 months or whatever knows how much I rate Liam Stocker, and my big concern going into this season is, what if Liam Stocker gets injured? Because we don't really have another small defender. And in my mind, Liam Stocker is probably one of the first 3 or 4 on the team sheet for that very reason. He is the only guy that can play that role currently. I mean, maybe there's an Angus Hastie can maybe do that. He's probably not as accountable. He's not as physical as Liam Stocker. He's probably a little bit taller, but I was concerned when I saw that Stocker wasn't on the team sheet. Like you said, Jack Carroll wasn't the worst player on the night by any stretch, and I don't want to make this a Stocker versus Carroll kind of argument, but I was concerned looking at their forward line. I mean, it's not as if they have a monstrous, forward line where you're looking at 2 or 3 big monster key forwards. You're looking at a couple of mobile mid-sized forwards, Membry type stuff, and then you got McStay, who's kind of the big guy. And I kind of felt like we went in a little bit too tall, based on matchups, and I was very surprised given the number of smalls and mid-sized forwards that run through that forward line, your Elliots, your Schultzes, your De Goeys, etc., and a bunch of the midfielders that go down there to rest, that we didn't have a dedicated small defender in there. And I do think, I called it out on the night, and I think in hindsight, it was a mistake. I'm really interested to see what happens this week, to see whether they rectify that, or maybe Stock's just kind of fallen down the pecking order. I don't really understand the decision. I mean, I can kind of understand that they want a more run, which is why you include someone like a Carroll, for example. But I feel like that list has plenty of run and doesn't have a singular lockdown small defender. And in that case, Stocker kind of has to be in the 23 every week, in my opinion. I mean, what do you guys think?
There's probably
agreed. I mean, Carroll's not another Darcy Wilson, where you're picking someone with blistering speed. It's he's a solid player, but he's not an out and out running machine.
No. I mean, they are a bit similar. I mean, one left foot, one right foot. There's probably teams that they're both able to be put in there. Like we had Stocker and Jimmy Webster in the same team. I don't see the reason why these two couldn't play together. Like we, as we're saying, we always thought it'd be Stocker first, Carroll second if we need it. But I think we've seen enough to say he could possibly step up maybe to what the Stocker role was last year, and the Stocker moves up to the Webster role, and that kind it might be that sort of way it almost works in. But there's definitely teams that are going to have those small forwards that will trouble us. I mean, I look at Brisbane; they might be a team that we need to play both of them against. I mean, even this week against Melbourne with the two pickets, that might be a situation where we go, hey, we need both of them out there. So they're not a big forward line. So yeah, it's again, it was weird to not see him in the team. It was weird that I didn't think Carroll was that much better than him in the preseason games or anything, or showed that much that it's like, wow, he has to be the first one out in that sort of position picked. But he's done enough to not be dropped. That's for sure. I'd just be surprised to maybe not see them both in there at the same time.
Yeah, and I guess it segues. I mean, we'll talk a little bit later about what we do selection-wise. Obviously, one change has to be made with Marshall's concussion, but a couple of other things. I'll put one to you, Nick, and then one to you, H, to you, Nick, the recruits, the four recruits. I think they all did a bit. I'll mention Flanders in the sense that he was very quiet early, but I thought in the third quarter when Collingwood had momentum, he was easily our best player in terms of holding that up and contributed enough to be encouraging despite what a few people have said. But how did you summarise the four?
Yeah, I thought they were all somewhere between okay and pretty good. I thought Tom De Koning was the best of the lot by quite a distance. I mean, he was in our two best players, I think. Silvani, like Flanders, started very slowly. I thought he looked, with our view of the field, Darren, I thought that Silvani looked a step behind just about everybody. I mean, he's not the quickest bloke in general, but he's also not the slowest. But he did look a step behind just about everybody else on the ground for the first quarter and a half. But I did think that he worked his way into the game. I think he took some good marks. He read the ball well. And I think that he kind of played that, I don't know, kind of second, third, kind of floating tall role pretty well, particularly from halftime onwards. Flanders, like you said, started slow. He had some very poor mistakes early, but worked his way into it. I thought his two-way running was very good in that third quarter, and provided us with an outlet out of halfback, but also was trying to make things happen through the middle and push forward. And then Liam Ryan, obviously, incredible kick from the boundary line. We know that he can do that sort of stuff, but then let himself down with a couple of other opportunities. So, bit of a mixed bag, but positive signs, I think, and plenty to work on. I think Tom De Koning showed enough to kind of, for Saints fans who potentially hadn't seen him play that often before, this is kind of the baseline for Tom De Koning. Kid's a star. He is a star. When he's fit and firing, he's one of the best in the business. And, he showed what he was able to do playing behind the ball when we had Marshall inside forward 50 and De Koning kind of being that big body, the wall kind of around the centre line when we were set up inside 50. And just his movement around the ground is elite. The way that he gets up and down the ground, the way that he can stop it at half back, the way that he can impact in the forward line, and just you have to watch him. You have to watch him. You have to play on him. You've got to defend him. And he's going to be vitally important for us this season.
And H, we didn't tag their best player. He had 41. They tagged our best player and restricted him. Is it as simple as that when assessing what we should have done? Or is it a case of we had other things to worry about and on the NAS point, he's just got to work through the fact that he's going to get that a bit this year?
Yeah, not necessarily. We know Naz is going to get a bit of attention, but yes, he had 41, but I feel like he's had more damaging games before. I felt like there was a lot of disposals maybe weren't all that much. So I think if it got to a point where he was really hurting us, we might have just put someone a little bit close to him. With Garcia was sort of following him. It wasn't necessarily sitting on top of him sort of tag we saw again with Windhager last year. And as I say, he got a lot of it, but it wasn't like, I mean, he'll probably get the 3 votes as anyone will tell you that's the way it goes, but I just don't feel like he hurt it as much as the game last year. So it's not, it wasn't necessarily the wrong call not to go to him, but I feel like if he had really started to get a real damaging stranglehold, I guess, on the game, that we hopefully would have gone, hey, that's it. Let's move someone onto him.
We'll wrap that game up in a bow with the votes. Now we are calling that the DFC MVP award. It will return to the Jack Steele award once his playing days are over at Melbourne. We just figure we'll retire the jumper for a little while. So we've given the honour of our MVP votes to the Danny Frawley Centre. So go to dannyfrawleycentre.com.au, check out the incredible resources for your community. It is, of course, at Moorabbin, so go and check that out. It's been a ripper for the club. I think you can head in there and use it to, the wellness centre and all of that is in that space. But a reminder on our votes. So rather than the standard 3-2-1 of a Brownlow, we have 10 votes. We could give 10 to one player or 1 to 10 players, or any combination thereof. So I couldn't split a couple of players at the top, so I ended up with 4 one-voters. I gave 1 vote to Marcus Windhager, didn't use it particularly well early, but built into the game like Flanders did and played a pretty solid game overall, and worked really hard both ways. Silvani, I agree that he struggled a little bit early with his ball use and timing, but I thought as the game went on, he was quite reliable and didn't make many mistakes, was trying to hold us up in the third quarter of the second half when we were struggling. Gave a vote to Wilkie. He probably could have got more than that. I thought he played a pretty solid game overall. Brad Hill gets a vote, nearly 2. I thought he was just about our best player at half time. But then I gave 2 players BOG. I gave 3 votes to Tom de Koning for all of the reasons mentioned above, his influence around the ground, and 3 to Jack Sinclair. He couldn't do much more than he did with a 35 possession game. Composed with ball in hand, good decision maker. Nice start to his captaincy, as it was for Wilkie as well. But H, how did you spread your 10?
Yeah, similar players. It was I guess a group we would probably all be looking at the same sort of thing. But gave 1 to Hilly. I thought, as I was saying earlier, the first 15 minutes it was his game. He started off really well and moved into just wasn't as dominant for the rest of the match, but didn't disappear. So that was good to see. Then 2 to Windy, worked as hard as he could in the middle there and did as much as he could to get us moving, get us up the field. And I was saying, again, a few turnovers in there, but it was moving the ball forward, and that's what we needed to do. It was just unfortunate the connection up the forward line wasn't always working. 2 to de Koning as well. Great first game for us. We'll see how he goes, whether we decide to play a second ruck this week or not with him, and see how he goes one out or how he works with someone else. But it seemed to work reasonably well. Either one working behind the ball, one forward the ball, or, I mean, I was saying to some people at one point that it was a bit strange seeing we had about a dozen rucks out there and we had Cooper Sharman taking in the forward line still. It was a bit interesting at times still, but it was a good start for him. 2 to Sinks. Again, a bit on the Dacos line. I was surprised by how many touches he'd actually had. I went back and had a quick skip through it again and just looked at him and thought, okay, he's racked up a few that I didn't sort of see at first. So I was a little surprised he had that much. It wasn't maybe as impactful as he normally could be. But just racked him up as the night went on. And I gave 3 to Wilkie because without him down the back line, I feel that could have been, despite that they didn't have a whole lot of inside 50s compared to us, it could have been a much bigger loss. He's, as we say, the general down there, now the captain down the back line. And he's probably kept us within that 2-goal margin in the end. And just does what he does week in, week out, and gives it his all down there every match.
I'm not sure how many times we've had 3 different maximum vote pollers, but very similar group. I do have an apology for Brad Hill. I loved his dash and dare. My marks against, and the reason why I didn't give him a vote, were just a couple of key moments defensively where he just wasn't able to stick a tackle or dropped his head going into a contest. And I thought they were just really influential moments where we needed your experienced heads to kind of stay ahead of the ball and make a contest. And I thought that he just let himself down a couple of times too many in the back half. I gave 1 vote to Mitch Owens. Would have been close to best on ground if he'd been able to kick another couple. And he had his chances, had his opportunities. But I thought in terms of the forward line, he's becoming a real leader in that forward line as well. And just big, strong body, hitting the contest, hitting the man. Really impressive general performance from Mitch Owens. Would have loved, like I said, from the kick an extra couple, but really strong performance to start the year. I gave 2 to all of Carl Wilkie, Marcus Windhager, and Tom de Koning for all the reasons you guys have said already. I thought Windhager ran really hard, missed a few targets early, but I thought he worked really hard, worked himself into the game, and was a really influential player through the middle. Carl Wilkie, obviously the general down back, like you said, H. And Tom de Koning won the ruck contest and was really impactful for us in a number of phases across the ground. But Jack Sinclair, I spoke earlier about how Collingwood's experienced heads were able to stay composed while our younger blokes panicked a little bit with the ball in some of those key moments. And Jack Sinclair never seems to panic. He's just such a cool head. He's someone you can rely on all the time. You know what you're going to get from him. And a super important player for us, as we know. But I thought just another really impressive game from him. Wasn't his best performance in red, white and black by any stretch, but just a really solid, composed leader's performance for us across halfback.
Our other awards that we roll with every year, just to reintroduce them, we have our Shannon Knoll, which is, of course, his hit single Lift, for those that don't remember, for anyone who needs to lift. And our Jason Blake Award, which is for the quiet achiever, the unheralded performance, someone who doesn't necessarily get the accolades that their performance would warrant. Jason Blake, obviously, with the 1 Brownlow vote being evidence of that. But we'll start with the Shannon Knoll. I gave mine to Cooper Sharman, the reason being that he kicked a goal early, kicked a big goal in the second quarter. And look, it's hard for him to be the one out only forward sometimes, trying to jump over people's heads. But it was a nearly game for him. I don't blame him too much for that, but he had concrete hands a few times where the ball just sort of popped away or he couldn't hold on. He missed a shot that he should have kicked. He probably should have kicked 5, probably, on the balance of the opportunities. And if he does that, we win. So I know that's harsh for Cooper, but he was in the right spot maybe half a dozen times, and it just didn't quite happen for him. So we know, generally speaking, he has good hands, though. But Nick, your Shannon Knoll?
Darcy Wilson, I hate doing this, and I know that I'm going to get a text from Phil Dalladakis pretty soon after this goes to air, having a crack at me for saying so. But look, I think Darcy Wilson's building himself into a really important part of this team, and we know what he can do. We know the damage he can do. He can hit the scoreboard. He's incredibly quick. His running power is immense. He's elite in that facet of the game. 21 touches, 6 clangers, and 42% disposal efficiency isn't good enough for a key part of our midfield. And he is becoming a key part of our midfield. I think the way that the teams stack up now and line up with wingmen, and the way that we want to play our game, which is fast rebound footy, coming out of defence, pushing forward, being direct, moving the ball fast, all those sorts of things. he's a really important player when you look at the style of footy that Ross wants to play, two-way running, etc. Just didn't have it. Just didn't have it on Sunday night. I mean, he had some moments where he put the Jets on for a second and that sort of thing, but his disposal let him down horribly, and he made some very poor decisions. I'm going to look for him to rebound this week against Melbourne because I think that he's an important part of what we want to do moving forward, and I'm not sure that Ross and the coaching group will stand for too many of those performances, but I also think that they have the ability to get the best out of guys like Darcy Wilson, and looking forward to seeing what he can rebound with next week. H?
Yeah. Again, another guy that, we would really love to see hit peak pretty soon. Philippou. The handballs over the head, the handballs behind the back, the handballs no look, that sort of thing. He's got to have a bit more of a control on where he's disposing the ball and where he's delivering it to. Like we saw it in the practice games, the quick handballs to players on the run, the turn, the double spin move on, against Essendon. I mean, I've put in notes here. I mean, anyone who follows the NBA and remembers Jason Williams, the way he used to throw the ball over his head and that sort of thing, and hit the target every time. Every time the ball would go to the player. That's what it looked like, but it was going straight to them, unfortunately. So,
Philippou probably doesn't know who white chocolate is.
No, he probably wouldn't have been born when he was playing. So, that's kind of what I saw, and I'm going, but it wasn't working. He needs to. I don't know whether it was a little bit of didn't have that confidence to break out the pack like he did against Essendon the other week and that sort of thing, but he just sort of gave that quick handball just to get it out of there. And let's hope he picks up that confidence to go, hey, I'm getting out of this pack. I'm breaking away. I'm going to find a player who's running past this pack and hit him straight on the chest and set him free. So, yeah, while it can look good, it can look fantastic when it's fancy and it works. When you turn over, it doesn't do anything for anyone. So let's hope that little bit of play doesn't continue, unless it starts working, I guess.
I want to give a Darren, just before we move on to the Jason Blake, I want to give a special mention for this award because I think we've all given it to some young blokes who have a lot of learning and a lot of development still in their career. There is an older bloke who I think does need to lift and needs to get better if we want to be a serious football team, and that's Jack Macrae. Has had an incredible career, very good career, and we know how good he can be, but he also was not good on Sunday night. And, you know, if we want to be winning games of football at the G, we're going to need Jack Macrae at the coalface, doing what he does best, which is winning the ball and delivering it, you know, with that left foot. And he didn't really have either of those things on Sunday night. So he's a big watch, I think, moving forward with the way that our midfield is going to line up moving forward.
Yep, good shout. Absolutely. Nick, you can hold the floor for your Jason Blake award out of that game.
Yeah, someone who didn't get any votes has been mentioned a couple of times in the media as someone who had a crack at Nick Dacos, once or twice over the course of the evening. But Hugo Garcia, didn't do anything super flashy, but, 7 contested possessions, 5 clearances. It was 17 touches total, but 82% disposal efficiency. I thought he put his body on the line really well. I think he works really hard. He doesn't always get the rewards. But for a guy to go as hard as he does, to be as clean as he was with the ball was impressive. I think we've kind of heard of him, as I said, in that context of, going up against Nick Dacos and not really in the context of him playing his own game of football. And I think that just deserved a shout out. It wasn't a spectacular game by any means, but I thought he did his part and worked hard. And, if we get that out of Hugo every week, then I think we'll be in a pretty good position.
Agreed. H, yours?
I couldn't go past him either, to be honest. I looked through the list and I was looking to go and who stands out that I didn't give votes to, and I couldn't really pick up anyone else. I mean, I thought about Jack Carroll, I thought about Mitch Owens, and I sort of a bit like they're in and around about where we kind of expect them. But yeah, what we see Hugo possibly being able to do, that he was following someone, but as you're saying, he got the inside 50s. He was laying the tackles. He could test a possession. We lost Jack Steele, and they're the sort of things that he was providing us. So he's stepped into that a little bit, and yeah, hopefully that's a bit of a launching block for him, and yeah, we can see him really step up. And if we do need someone shut down at midfield, that's pretty good experience. Hopefully he can shut someone down completely one game and really make a mark on the competition.
Yeah, I was going to give it to Mitch Owens for the reasons that Nick stated in the votes. I thought he held the forward line together, and his strength is ridiculous for someone. You don't look at him as a monster or anything like that, but it's like watching Fraser Garrick sometimes, where you just can't move him out of the way. But obviously, he's kicking. You can work on that from there. But I wanted to give a shout out to Flanders. Actually, I thought. I mean, he didn't have a possession until 20 minutes into the game. That was a hospital hand pass to Windhager in the middle of the ground. I think he had 2 at quarter time and ended up with 28. I think for struggling at the start of your first game at new club, I thought he worked through that really well. So looking forward to see what he does going forward from that point on. We'll turn our attention to the Ds. A reminder, a bit of cross-promotion as well. Somewhere in the next little while, we'll be floating an episode with Michael Gardner. If you haven't found that on our channels yet, it'll be coming soon enough. So, of course, had some great games and some great memories with the Saints, and a really good fella. So that'll be coming your way soon. But
number one,
the Ds.
Not many.
Stephen King.
Darren, I was just gonna say, not many people have a resume of number 1 draft pick, Rising Star nominee, All-Australian, and Blue Diamond winner.
Yeah, that last one I think would be the envy in particular of most people. I wonder what you'd pick first on that list: All-Australian number 1 draft pick or winning the Blue Diamond. That would be interesting. But so Gardy, good chat with him. So keep an eye out for that one on the channels. The D, Stephen King, his ruck partner in crime, will coach his first game against us this week. Another of Ross's children, if you will, like Andrew McQualter and a few others that have had opportunities. Obviously, Stephen King cut his teeth at Geelong mainly. Has spent a bit of time at the Bulldogs and the like. But Jack Steele plays his first game, ironically, for the Ds against the Saints, barring any mishaps. The D's a pretty new look side. Obviously, Viney out injured, May retired, Petrarca gone, Oliver gone, new coach, all of that. So hard to know what to expect. They've had some good kids. The younger Pickett brother looks like he'll debut. Jai Cully's been a standout in the preseason. He'll play. Looks like Brodie Myercheck's recovered from his concussion, so he'll play. I think Bailey Fritsch was under a cloud, but he'll play. So H, it just comes down to us, really. I mean, Marshall would have to be replaced. Are you picking Keeler? And would you make that Stocker move? So, for example, Carroll and Marshall for Stocker and Keeler, something like that.
It's gonna be a question. You got Gawn this week, obviously. Gawn probably going by himself. Do we go with just the DeConey by himself and give it a go and see how he goes by himself for us? Do we, bring in, as we're saying, they've got a couple of dangerous small forwards. Do we bring in, just make the change, Marshall for, say, Stocker or something like that? It's going to be an interesting one whether we need that extra ruckman or not, and we may necessarily not need it. We've got about, as I was saying, a dozen other players who are in the team who have played ruck at some stage, including Silvani, who we've just brought in. He did it for Carlton for a long time, and we got plenty around the ground that can take those, I guess, forward and defensive throw-ins. And you got to remember, there's not as many throw-ins around the middle of the ground anymore, so they're not having to get to as many as those throw-ins, so they're not probably using as much tank as they had to. So, yeah, it might be a case of let's bring in that extra smallish defender, and because we know that's the kind of game they're going to play. They're going to play a small forward game, so that could only be our only change, depending on anyone else if they don't get up or something they get something niggling or something, and they're not ready to go. Or so I don't think there's anyone really pushing at the moment to push anyone out of the team, because clearly we haven't had much else happening outside the opening round match. So yeah, it's kind of a case of let's go with what we've got as our best and work with it, and let's only replace what we really have to. So yeah, we'll give it a go this week and then see how Marshall goes, and to whether we bring him back as more of a forward and just a pinch ruckman when he's occasionally needed.
Yeah, that's exactly what I would do. I think is let De Koning go one out against Gawn, and I think that's the change. Like you said, H is Marshall out, Stocker in. The big question for me is, do you then go in with the forward line of Owens, Sharman, and Smalls, or do you with bringing Stocker in, do you pull out someone like Caminiti and throw him into the goal square or a centre half forward to provide that big body? And then you're replacing a tall with a small, because you've already got Wilkie and Silvani and Taru back there. Do you push Taru forward? There's big raps on him and his ability as a forward in front of the ball. So I don't know. There's some question marks, but the good thing is that we have some flexibility. We have some variety. We have some depth. We can make changes and we can move the magnets if we have to. So I'm really intrigued to see what Ross does. But yeah, Marshall out, Stocker in would be the one change for me.
Yeah, keen to see the response to, as I say, hard to know what to expect from Melbourne. We're coming off a blockbuster where we were okay, but obviously it would be disappointed. Hopefully there's no letdown off that. D's obviously fresh, so it is in that danger game category because of the unknowns. So hopefully it's one thing through watching the documentary and other things as well. As frustrating as it is, I do have a bit more faith than I've probably had in the past. I mean, listening to those conversations and the professionalism of everyone involved, it feels like everyone's on the same page and they are working towards it, even if they have bad days or little setbacks. So I'm confident that they're not going to fall apart at the seams or anything like that. And I think even last year we were pretty resolute when it wasn't going our way. We seemed to have a crack and fight things out pretty well. So, yeah, I think the attitude will be all right. And if we can handle, a bit of heat early, hopefully we've got enough through the middle against a younger, inexperienced group to hopefully have enough to get ourselves on the board. So, yeah, keen to see how that all looks for us and what the plan is around those selections, whether it is Keeler who was an emergency or whether, as you say, Caminiti goes forward or they just go with a slightly smaller setup down there whilst we wait for that all to unfold. So, another chance to have a look at the MCG as well, Nick.
Yeah, it's just I'm keen to see us play more games at the MCG. I think we do, in general, play it pretty well. I thought we played it pretty well on Sunday night. We just couldn't finish and make it count. There are a couple of little things before I guess we sign off. You mentioned the documentary, Darren, which came out last Wednesday night. Shout out to friend of the pod, Dan Sultan, for a great job narrating the doco. Great job. So well done to Dan. I know red, white and black's in his blood and he would have been rapt to be a part of that. Wanted to mention Dennis Cometti, obviously passed away last week, and some of his most iconic lines and one-liners were in St Kilda games. Rewalt, remarkable. Obviously the Michael Gardner mark at the end of that Geelong game. The one that we don't like talking about, the librarian. Some of his most iconic one-liners were in St Kilda games, and he kind of was the voice of a generation in terms of footy watchers, and I think we'll all miss him. Darren, you're a part of that fraternity. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to mention. I've kind of just thrown this at you, but I think he was a key part of all of our footy lives.
Yeah, he was genuine in the sense that, from someone in the craft, he was probably the best in the business. You look at him and, say, Bruce for their versatility. So Bruce, his specialty was probably athletics, transitioned superbly into football, did a bit of horse racing and all that sort of stuff. And then Dennis, football mainly for him, obviously played it and coached it and then through that. But anyone who watched the 96 Atlanta Olympics call and the way he captured the moment with Kieran Perkins, it's brilliant. And whilst he was entertaining and flamboyant, he didn't do it with ego. There's obviously a lot of callers that will try to make the moment about them. I thought he was outstanding at capturing the moment without trying to overshadow the moment. So, yeah, it's very sad, but yeah, undeniably a legend of the craft. I think, and he even dabbled in cricket and various other things as well. So,
yeah, he was probably the voice you heard most on a Saturday afternoon in the 90s and 2000s, and even when Channel 9 took the rights. That I think he was the first one who was signed over there to make sure that continued. And I mean, the other ones that we haven't necessarily heard over the last week or whatever has been the positive winning optimistically, came in
Misty optically.
Incredible. To get that out at that moment, it's not an easy thing to get, but just to think of it at the moment, that second, it's those sort of things. You just go, it's a level above any sort of other commentators you could think of. It's just to have that quick wit, and it's almost comedic levels of wit. So we've all missed him calling games ever since he retired, and he went back to obviously radio for a little bit later on, and it would have been nice to his last TV was calling the Bulldogs breaking their drought. His last radio was Melbourne breaking their drought. It would have been nice to have him done it for us too. But it's unfortunate we won't get that. But there's lots to go back and listen to and go just marvel at how amazing he actually was.
It's not his fault, but he owns one of the most haunting lines that's not the Librarian line. It's a very obscure line that not many people would remember, but for anyone who's watched the replay of the 97 grand final, halfway through the second quarter when St Kilda kicked 3 in a row at the start of the term and go out by 17 points, I remember the line, Dennis Kibiti, there's like a boundary thrown on the wing, and he said, St Kilda leading by 17 points and looking like the team of destiny. And that's a painful line every time I think back to that moment. He wasn't wrong, but it's a hard one to hear. So, but I remember that from '97. Unfortunately, that's more painful than the Librarian moment for me. So,
there's so many good ones, and he prepared so well. I mean, you speak to anyone in the industry, and yes, he had the wit and the ability to pull these out, with a second's notice, but he had the intellect to be able to craft these for the moment, and not use them when the moment didn't deserve it, when the moment didn't call for it. But he knew exactly when to pull out the zinger and when to use it. And the rest of the time, he was just an elite caller. You take out all the zingers, all the one-liners, he was still an elite caller. That other stuff was the cherry on top of what was a brilliant career. And I think we'll all miss listening to that voice.
Most definitely. And want to throw in obviously Rex into that mix. I think is the holy trinity, if you will, of growing up. Rex, Dennis, and Bruce. So we turn our attention to the Ds, as we said at the MCG. It's going to be a really important game. Nice to get a hit out there as well. We've got a tough early fixture before it settles down. We have to take opportunities like this. So hopefully we can right the ship and get ourselves on track with a 1-1 start. But thanks for tuning in, and go Saints.